Good morning, sir.
How are y'all? Everybody. It is a great Monday morning. It is Monday morning, July 7th. Wow. Already the 7th. That means a week from today, Brendan and I will be in Atlanta, SEC Media Days, along with about 1,500 other members of the media from all over the country. Hope our friend George Somerville makes it back over from Glasgow, Scotland, in the UK. He was a blast last year. Had him on the show a few months ago. Have to do that again soon. Hey, take a picture with your phone of the QR code as we broadcast live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And we do this 5 days a week, 8 to 9 a.m. Central, Monday through Friday. And of course, we got a lot of shows on this channel.
Lots.
Mighty
Martin. We got more. We got so much stuff on this channel. It's ridiculous. And we have news this week that you don't even know about, Rob. We'll be talking about. We've got new shows coming down the line. I don't know why you would go anywhere else to get your SEC football conversation or go get any conversation about football, college football, especially then right here at SEC.live. Rob, we're redoing our website. We're redoing all sorts of things for people to be able to watch anywhere they are. So it's exciting times.
It is. It really is. And go also, all of our sponsors are at Sidelines.live because you go there and those sponsors, some of them just want to be mentioned, every day. Some of them more, but I'm going to tell you what, all these sponsors, guys like Gaddis Home Innovation, Web Footed Kennels, they've been there a long time. They're all at Sidelines.live. And look, a lot to talk about. Brendan, you were just telling me about some recruiting news. Georgia back up to number one.
Are we surprised?
No, we're not. And they've had such an explosive last few weeks. Yes. How are you going to keep them out of number one? And the flip side, you look around, look what Florida did last year. They were in the 60s, won 6 of their last 7 games, got hot, and flipped a bunch of guys late. Florida ended up number 7 in the country in recruiting, and they're having a hell of a year this year. So it'll be interesting to watch. I think there's two camps right now with recruiting, Brendan. Like you look at Auburn, I'm just going to say they look like they're being cautious. Now, if you're trepidatious, that could blow up in your face if you don't win a bunch of games come December. You're thinking, okay, well, these deals, if a school's promising a kid a bunch of money on an NIL deal and then it doesn't pass muster with Deloitte and the attorneys, what are you going to do? Well, that's just going to invite the bag man who never left college football. But if you thought schools, pushed the envelope, cheated, whatever you want to call it in recruiting before NIL, you probably were right. Don't kid yourself to think that that wasn't going on. Then you throw in NIL, and now you've got this new ruling from House. So what's happening is they're going, we'll just sue the NCAA, tie them up in court. So basically, if I'm a school, I'm gonna be out there telling the kids, look, unless they change the rules, this is your deal, okay? But that if the NCAA changes it, we'll have to fix it from there. So I think you're going to see more flips in November and December, than we have seen collectively in a long, long time. Coach Ellis Johnson was supposed to be with us. He is in the vet, had an emergency with his one of his pets, so he's there right now.
Well, Rob, I think it's interesting what you say. It's not interesting, and I don't want to go on about it because we don't really know. And I think that's the part that we're sort of, we're spitballing with everybody, based off the information that we talk about, that we hear about, because we're like the vortex of information. I said something to somebody yesterday. I said, I swear to God, we're turning to the vortex of information between Florida, Alabama, Georgia, because people come and they call us and they bring us information. But, end of the day, everyone's sort of at like anxiety level, a little higher as each day goes on, is because everyone's bet heavy on where the future is going to be. Where are we going to do? Georgia's betting heavy on this, and you're talking about Hugh Freeze, the collectives, they're betting on potential the kids are going to make decisions in December, so let's let them float a little bit. This is a major shift in what was, right, even from last year, because now how do you acquire talent? How do you develop talent? And, is the portal more important than recruiting, based off the fact that, you got guys that have got a lot of options when they're recruiting early, and you really don't know. How do you really know? And we've always asked that question when it comes to recruiting. How are we going to gamble on this 1 5-star? And who gave him the 5-star ranking to begin with, right? So
yeah.
That is all a part of what we do, much like the NFL has the draft. Recruiting is the long version of the draft, and then you throw in transfer portal, NIL money, and all that stuff. So it's a lot to even digest that. Then you add the house settlements and all these things to it. And who's got the power, right? Because if you and I have this discussion, it's like, well, the NCAA doesn't seem like they're going anywhere because they've always been there, right? So does government have that much oversight, considering you've got, people changing power constantly?
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Well, what I think's happening is it's a lot like shorting a stock. The shorts, you're betting on a stock going down in price, and all of a sudden it bounces back, starts going up. You got to cover your short positions. That's what we're seeing with NIL and recruiting. You've got some schools that have been very cautious. They're fighting with intrepidity. They're going forward like that and going, let's be conservative. Hey, man, use it or lose it. I mean, it's a diametrically opposing argument that can be made, because one camp, let's just go balls to the walls. Nothing's going to change. Just promise them everything. You'd rather over-promise and under-deliver? No. You want to under-promise and over-deliver, but you better be honest with the kids and tell them on the front end, things could change. This is a very fluid environment. We don't know what's going to happen, but what we do know is that in 53 days or 52 days, you're going to have Missouri playing on a Thursday night. In 53 days, you're going to have Auburn playing at Baylor. Auburn better be ready for Baylor. And I'm telling you, Brandon, we talk to a lot of smart people. You know that every day. The Big 12, the Big 10, the ACC, these guys that used to be second and third team on your depth chart at some of the upper half SEC schools, they're not hanging around. They're at Indiana. Kurt Cignetti's not going anywhere. Paul Feinbaum brings that up. We do it every day on the show. SEC supremacy and dominance, 14 of the last 19 national championships. It's always up for grab if you don't show up. Last year, SEC did not have any elite teams. This year, we're not hearing a lot of, scuttlebutt that they do. But I tell you, from our vantage point, Brendan, there's going to be a couple of programs. I think Florida and Auburn, who've been down. Auburn, the worst cycle, 1946, 1950. If they have another losing season, they're going to tie the post-World War II nightmare. They lost to Wofford in 1950. Auburn's got to start winning games. You can't promise early playing time like you could the first 3 recruiting classes if you're Hugh Freeze. Now you
can't live off that anymore.
Yeah, you got to start winning.
You can't live off that anymore. Yeah. That was because we did it Florida, but look how we're recruiting. We've got all this stuff. Well, okay, great, but can you keep them? Can you afford them? I mean, gosh, early on in the portal, like a year ago, even a year and a half ago, there were just all sorts of teams were like, we don't even know how we're going to pay next month's bill. Like,
correct.
Our overhead is not covered in said business. We're screwed. How are we going to get this money? Where's it going to come from? Urban Meyer said on this show, or not this show, on our network, Sidelines.live last week.
Yeah, he did.
That he said to Buddy Martin and to myself that this is not a sustainable model financially. Look, we're blinded, completely blinded by the fun of it all. Because last year was fun to watch. It was a fun college football season as a fan. If you like football now as a teammate, obviously there's always going to be a winner and a loser. But end of the day, we saw all of this and we got excited about it. We're excited about the product on the field, but we're a little bit blinded about the fact that we're unsustainable. It's like the business that gets, the angel investor that gets, $2 billion, and you're like, okay, great. Now what? It's difficult, I think, right now to sort of navigate this landscape, and guys like Urban Meyer and the Nick Sabans and even the Hugh Freezes and all these. It's an old system that they've learned an entire breadth of a career. And now that is all shifted, and nobody knows where that go. And like Urban said, it is just not going to be sustainable because there's not that much money to keep paying all of these athletes. So Rob, what do? It's going to have to then shrink down. It's like a business is going to have to go fire and have a layoff.
Yeah.
And now you're going to have like, these, again, power conferences, big, giant super conferences, we're headed this direction, SEC versus whatever name you want to put in there.
Well, I don't think the ACC is going to disappear. I don't think the Big 12 is going to disappear. I think the Pac 8.5 is proof that other conferences are going to figure out some way to be competitive. But things are always cyclical in sports, all right? We're going to get into this talking about cyclical runs, Oklahoma football. The last 3 years, the first year, Brent Venables, they were sub 500, 6-7. Then they go 10-3. Last year, another 6-7 year. Oklahoma fans are used to winning. Florida fans are used to winning. You mentioned something, and I think what you were saying was that you built the Helmer Center, 90, 100 million, whatever. Auburn built the new Starship Enterprise, the Woltzolt Center. Okay, facilities are great. You got to have them. But there's a conversation you're going to have with every recruit, with him and his family before he leaves campus. He's going to say, how much? How much and when am I getting it? So right now, you can say, this is what – you better be careful. You better say, just like if you're talking to somebody about investing their money, if you start trying to guarantee we're going to get this much or that much, you're a dead man walking. Compliance will wipe you off the map. Oh. What you've got to do is say there's risk involved, okay? Okay, you can keep your money in a savings account and go broke safely if you want to. You'll get no return in inflation, taxes, the cost of living. You better be winning games. Recruits want to see you winning. Look at a program like Clemson. They've not been crazy about the transfer portal with Dabo, but what he's doing is very smart. He's built a culture. And you look at their offensive line, they got a bunch of guys that have played together for a long time. You look at Oklahoma, look at their defensive line, and Josh Helmer from KREF Radio in Oak City, Norman. I'm not going to call it the Metroplex because that's in damn Texas. But
do not say that yet.
Yeah, that's right. But half your team historically has come from the state of Texas. Any kid in Oklahoma you pretty much get. Then you go into Arkansas, and now you're in the SEC. You can kind of go anywhere now. But to Oklahoma, probably the fifth winningest program in the history of college football, 7 national titles, 52 conference titles, 7 Heisman Trophy winners. Brent Venables is going to be coaching the defense more. And my friend Jim Nagy's your new general manager. I used to ask him about, well, you going to think about going into coaching, Jim? He's got a son at Auburn. I'm like, you'd be a great coach. He goes, I don't know. And then Oklahoma comes along. That's the biggest off-field hire in college football in America that people aren't talking about. Josh, how are you? Welcome aboard. I'm wound up, man.
Josh, he has the longest intro in sports talk history. Sorry, Rob Browne. Sorry. Welcome to that. Next time, go get a cup of coffee. You can come on.
Rob, Brendan, gentlemen, good morning. Great to be with each of you. Yeah, no, the Jim Nagy hire obviously has been and is gigantic for Oklahoma. And one of the items that will be discussed heavily today is some of Jim Nagy's recent remarks about, look, if you got a 5-star recruit and a 3-star recruit and we've graded them the same, then probably money's going to talk, and that's going to take you in a direction to where he didn't say this, but he's basically saying probably you're going to take the 3-star kid. If you have the same grade on your board and you trust your evaluation, then you're going to go with the option that helps you in the revenue share side. So in an age where now you're assigning dollar figures to players, somebody that has had, the relationship that he had with the Senior Bowl and all the connections with NFL draft scouts and on and on and on. The connections that Nagy has in his history is huge for Brent Venables in Oklahoma, a team, a program that, guys, obviously this 2025 season, it's pretty make or break.
Well, you're there in Oklahoma City, Norman. They're about 20 minutes away. That's a big media market. I live in Memphis. The Grizzlies and Thunder have created a great rivalry in the NBA. But, man, I don't know if per capita you're going to find a more sports fanatical state, Oklahoma. I mean, it is – I've followed Oklahoma since I was a kid because my dad's friend Buddy Leak played there in the 50s. So we've always – Southern Fried Sooner was his website. But knew a lot of Oklahoma people here in Memphis. If you didn't pay attention to Oklahoma football, you weren't watching football. You were part of the football television aristocracy in the 70s. Is your fan base starved for a national championship?
You know, the Oklahoma City Thunder, you mentioned the Thunder, just won the world championship.
Exactly.
Just captured their first NBA title. And it was full circle with Kevin Durant and James Harden and Russell Westbrook and Ibaka and that group that got there, but they never got back and they didn't get over the top. And okay, so here they are, a baker's dozen years later, and SGA and company, they win a world championship. And we're having the debates, okay, well, does this satiate a little bit of that desire, or does it ramp it up for Oklahoma football? And I would argue, I think it ramps it up for Oklahoma football. I mean, it's been so long. This is the longest drought since Oklahoma won a title between winning their next national championship. So it's already been a historically extended drought for Sooner fans, and they are pining. They are hopeful for a national championship. Big 12 championships, part of the move to the SEC. I know a lot of folks, Oklahoma State fans, or detractors of Oklahoma's decision to join the SEC, pointed to dollar signs. And certainly there was a financial motivation for Oklahoma to join the SEC. But here in Sooner country, there was a lot of discussion of, you know, how many more Big 12 championships are you going to celebrate? We want the big enchilada. We want the national championship. So Big 12 championships had kind of gone stale, and understandably so for Sooner fans. So to answer your question, incredibly starved. I think this fan base, only by the success of the Thunder, has maybe ramped up another notch to obviously turn that corner and be a serious national player again.
Yeah, and you've always had that great rivalry, the Red River Shootout with Texas, which I think at the Cotton Bowl is one of the great rivalries in all of college football. But it's every sport in Oklahoma: gymnastics, softball, baseball, basketball. I mean, I remember Billy Tubbs coaching there, Wayman Tisdale. That's what we grew up with. And you pack every game, a Gaylord Family Stadium. The big money. There's oil in Oklahoma. People forget about that. Talk about the NIL collective out there in Clinton, Oklahoma, and the western part. There's a lot of, I mean, I know a lot of the stories back in the 80s when oil was busting. And a friend of mine was telling me about, he had fraternity brothers' family had 2 jets. They were hiding them in barns out in the country. Revenuers were coming after them. It is cowboy country, man. No, Gunsmoke was in Kansas, but I'm sure Festus made it to Oklahoma. I love Oklahoma. I love that spirit. They are as crazy. When they came to Auburn last year, we talked to a lot of Oklahoma fans, drank road sodas with them. What would you give the SEC in your first year in terms of road trips that you made? A, B, C, D, or the dreaded F?
Oh, no, I think it was fantastic. And it'll only continue to be that way and get better. And Sooner fans, of course, are familiar with Tennessee, the rally in the second half and in the fourth quarter that turned down for what game? Was, it's one that in recent memory, it was actually kind of the launching off point for Baker Mayfield. You know, you look back on Baker Mayfield's career at Oklahoma and what he's morphed into in the NFL. That Tennessee rally was a big part of it. So Sooner fans are familiar with what they're getting into with Knoxville this season, but they're excited to go to Tuscaloosa, a program like Alabama. There's such a great respect, I think, from Sooner fans for a program like Alabama. South Carolina, you're excited to go there. So the road trips a year ago to Auburn, to Ole Miss, Missouri, obviously, LSU, they were fantastic. They'll continue to be that way. I think Sooner fans were ready for a sense of newness, a sense of excitement, and certainly the SEC. It delivers it in droves, guys. There's nothing like the SEC, the pageantry, the passion of these fan bases. And you're right. Oklahoma fans are that way. They are so passionate about Sooner football, Sooner athletics in general, their sports teams, the Thunder, you name it, and that is matched and met and maybe at times exceeded by others in the SEC. That's a beautiful thing, baby.
But it's also a damn good academic school. They've got one of the top merit scholar, National Honor Society, 1, 2, or 3 in the country about every year. Great business school. The thing I saw with Oklahoma, Brent Venables, I've tried to find out everything I can about it. I know he's from Kansas. We watched him those 10 years at Clemson. I mean, Clemson was a different he's a program changer. So, here it is. I didn't see any coaches fired last year in the SEC. You got that $21.5 million gratuity is what it really is. You fire a coach, add 21.5. I don't think anybody will be as stupid as Texas A&M on what they did. But then again, Michigan State got Mel Tuckered. 10 years, $100 million. Guy has a good season. You can't do it. What's the record? What's the number, a magic number Oklahoma needs to win this year? And I'm not into this fire everybody. I'm not into that.
For Brent Venables to keep the job?
Yeah.
I think it's got to be, I'd say 9.
Okay.
I really think 9 just because, look, it's Oklahoma. And at the end of the day, you've had a couple of losing seasons in your first 3. You sandwich those, the meat of the sandwich was good in year 2, but the breading has not been good in years 1 and 3 for Brent Venables. And this is not a place where losing seasons are acceptable at OU. So 8-4, okay, maybe if you look at, say, the Michigan game and Alabama and Texas and LSU, these teams that we expect to be good, if those are games where it goes down to the wire and you're competitive and the offense clearly Arbuckle and company, John Mateer, it has to clearly be improved from a season ago. So you could talk me in, Rob, to a scenario to where, okay, Brent is back with 8-4 if the offense is improved, if you're competitive in those games you lose. But look, if you lose 4 or 5 games and in a couple of them you get embarrassed, I just don't see Brent keeping the job.
Let's take a look, though. Let's go through the schedule really quick. I got it up here. You start Illinois State on the 30th. OU wins that, right? That's your first win. I'm assuming we would pick that. The Michigan is a big question mark. How good is Michigan? How bad is Michigan? That's a tough one. What do you say, Rob? You say it's a win for Oklahoma there, or no?
Yeah, I think they will beat Michigan. I think the line of scrimmage, defensive front with Oklahoma will tear Michigan up.
All right. So what say you? Do you think they win against Oklahoma? Or excuse me, Oklahoma wins against Michigan there?
Yeah, I like Oklahoma's defensive line and Jaden Jackson and on and on and on. A lot of reasons to like Oklahoma up front defensively. Yeah. You got an inexperienced quarterback in Underwood. It's at home for OU. So I like Oklahoma to start this season. I think they're going to be perfect.
Right. So your first 3 games right there, I see them 3-0. I see Oklahoma winning the first 3 games. Then you come to Auburn. That's going to be a great football game, Rob. What would you say, sitting Auburn expert here?
Well, Jackson Arnold better not get the yips when he goes back home.
I think it's a big game for both programs. I think it's a real big game for both. I think you look at this and say, okay, well, the Hugh Freeze needs this win. And I think if you can turn the corner, this is that turn the corner game for OU. You win against Auburn. Now you're 4-0 going against Kent State.
Yeah.
That's a real good place before you come into the buzzsaw Texas, which is obviously a tough one for everybody else. Then you go into your tough run with South Carolina, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Bama, Missouri, LSU. That's how you finish your season. You go 5-0, and then you can be like, it's hard not to get a little scary. And is that a little bit about not welcome to the SEC, more of this is the SEC.
the final 7 games, guys, are brutal.
Brutal.
For Oklahoma. And you look at it and, okay, how good will Missouri be? Ole Miss is breaking in, obviously, a new quarterback. So, and there's a lot of that across the SEC. Tennessee, Aguilar, we know about the Nico saga. Will Josh Heupel and company, are they going to lament the fact that they didn't work harder to keep Nico? Are they going to be fine with Aguilar? You just don't know, right? Alabama, what's that quarterback situation look like? So you could kind of talk yourself into, even though it's Alabama, and that's a crazy thing to do, right? With Alabama, you could talk yourself into, okay, what does that look like there? So maybe it's not as daunting as it looks like today on paper, but right now where we sit today, knowing what we know from last season, last couple of seasons, the final 7 are a beast. And I agree with what you said, Brendan. I think that's the proverbial hot seat game right now in college football of Auburn, Oklahoma, Hugh Freeze, Brent Venables. I mean, just going into this thing where we're at right now, what we know, I mean, something's got to give, right? And that's a definite compass point game, I think, for both.
Well, and I think, too, John Mateers from Little Elm, Texas, Ben Arbuckle's been his coordinator the first 3 years at Washington State. That's where everybody goes. You want to get money, go to the bank. You want to get a quarterback, go to Washington State. Cam Ward's the latest #1 pick from there. I think this guy, his feet are, he ran for 826 yards, 15 touchdowns, something last year. This is the offense that's tailor-made for him. He's not going to have to go through a learning curve.
That's what you're hoping.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping.
Oklahoma, that's what you're hoping. And it is the case because, look, he and Arbuckle come over together from Washington State. So that part, you've heard that throughout the spring now into obviously this summer portion of the schedule that John Mateer's been teaching the other guys, right? This is what this thing looks like, and it's what it's supposed to look like. So, yes, hopefully that continuity is going to pay dividends for Oklahoma. They need it. It was so clear as last season was unfolding that quarterback, they had to address it. And obviously OU did that in the form of John Mateer.
Yeah. Well, one thing for sure is the learning curve on the defensive front sevens. That will be different. I guess I'm talking about offensively. He's going to know what he's got to do, and when he's just doing versus having to think a lot, that's a huge plus. I think he's a hell of a quarterback. I think Oklahoma. Did they upgrade? Was Jackson Arnold ever going to get better, or was it just you lose your whole offensive line, top 6 receivers? I mean, what do you think he'll do? He's got talent. I know he's got talent.
I just don't know. It's so hard to judge anything that was Oklahoma offensively a season ago. At times, feel like we saw enough with Jackson Arnold to say maybe he's just not going to be the guy that handles pressure all that well, right? The end of the Missouri game was a bad moment for Jackson Arnold. But in other ways, it's just what you said, Rob. It's, look, who's going to look good when they lose all of those pass catchers, when the offensive line is the, hodgepodge group that it was, the revolving door that it was a year ago with all the injuries. So I just don't know. I think it's a need more information with Jackson Arnold. He clearly can make all the throws, but can he be the guy under duress, under the heat of the SEC, and deliver in that situation? I just don't know. I need more information, and for the storyline makers out there, we're going to get a good answer to that question early when he comes back to Oklahoma.
Yeah, and we're going to have Coach David Cutcliffe on here with us in a second. And if you want to stay for a minute with us, I'd love to have you because it's a Monday morning. I've had some wild stuff happening, but he knows a lot about that quarterback position, having coached Peyton, having coached Eli, and so you are fantastic. We got to get you back on. Everybody out there at that KREF radio, we've had Tyler McComas on. Plank, are you part of the Sooner Network?
I do a little bit of fill-in baseball work for Sooner Radio, but I can't claim Sooner Network responsibilities yet. That could get me in trouble.
Well, I'll tell you what, you're really good. You got to come back.
You said something really fast before you go that I thought was really interesting, and I don't think this is not an answer; it's just sort of a statement. This time last year, I was excited about Oklahoma football because of what they did in the portal. They went after big guys up front, and they targeted offensive and defensive speed and size. And I thought that's brilliant. That's knowing the SEC. That's coming in and being. I just think that it's hard to put all that stuff together in such a short offseason. Yeah. I think Oklahoma is real good.
Yeah,
I think they're real good because of what they did last year, what they learned last year, and where they are now. And I think they're my sort of sleeper team in a sense. So they're going to come up and bite a few people because they did last year.
Yeah, I got them with 9 wins minimum.
Yeah, I got 9 wins.
Yeah,
so
I like the sound of that.
You like it, Josh? Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, Josh, tell people how they can follow you, keep up with you on social media.
Yeah, just give me a follow at Josh on Ref. That's the X, formerly Twitter handle out there.
That's right. Yeah, it's our big platform. Go ahead.
Twix.
I would encourage everybody to follow at KREF Sports as well. That's the radio station handle out there. And if you want to get into a back and forth with Sooner fans, that's a good way to come find it.
Well, look, that's what we love in the SEC, man. We're Scotch Irish. We love feuding and fighting and drinking and all that good stuff, man. Josh, take care, man. Have a great week. We'll do it again very soon.
Okay, Rob, Brendan, thanks, guys. You have a great week as well.
Thanks, Josh.
All right, man, that is good. That Oklahoma, I'm with you, Brendan. They did a lot in the portal, but this guy, I think John Mateer is a good one. Who better to ask about the quarterback position? I know we're trying to get his camera working.
His camera might be sideways. We'll fix him up.
Okay, all right. Coach David Cutcliffe, native of Banks High School there in Birmingham, the Magic City, about a 3-hour and 20-minute drive from Memphis. Coach, thank you so much for taking time on your Monday morning to check in with us. What a background. I love it. Are you in your office or are you still at the house?
I'm in my home office
love it.
this morning for a while. I always come in here after a workout and get a lot of little different things done before I head into the SEC office.
Well, I tell you what, you being here in Memphis, I've followed you a long time. I remarried. I got a Vol for life. And Mark Ham's got 10 season tickets, her cousin in Knoxville. Big tailgate by the Torch guy there, right where the Vol walk comes. A lot of Vols in my life. Oldest daughter's Alabama, and the rest of us are Auburn. That's just life in the SEC, isn't it?
That's family life in the SEC.
That's right.
It's absolutely. People ask me all the time, why do you think it just means more? And I said, well, there's no question. It's the fans. Yeah. And I mean that sincerely. All of you that are listening, you're the difference makers. And I remind everybody in our office quite regularly of that. I grew up in the Southeastern Conference. I've coached a long time in the Southeastern Conference as well, the 14-year stint in the ACC.
Yep.
The difference is the fans. And now, for the first time in my life, I'm not on a bus with a police escort as I go into a stadium, and I'm having to fight that dang traffic, get to my parking spot, walk through that wave of people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, are these fans awesome or what? So you are the reason. It's not the coaches. It's not the players. You are the reason, fans, that it just means more, and it does mean more. It's the best football playing conference in America. So thank you to all the fans.
Well, it also the coaches who, and I know coaches and Brendan and Buddy Martin, his dad, do. Your life. I remember talking to a coach at Auburn one time. I said, I see a sleeping bag over there. And he said, yeah, I spend the night in the office a lot. So that's just part of it. But Coach, you coached a lot of quarterbacks. You've done a lot of offensive play calling in your career. You were at Tennessee. You got to coach Peyton Manning. I remember the day Peyton signed with Tennessee. The Touchdown Club in Memphis had a recruiting party, and it was like there was a death among the Ole Miss fans, and then Tennessee fans were like, they just discovered the cure for everything in the world, and they basically did. Is there an echo in the background, Brendan?
Am I okay talking or no?
Yeah. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. There's a little bit of an echo. Okay, but it's better now. Yeah, you're
having to do this on my phone.
Yeah. You were better. Yeah, you had it perfect. There was just a little bit of an echo.
Yeah, I
Okay.
was having to hold it in my hand. I was trying to get away from
Yeah,
that.
you had it good. Yeah, that's good. So, Coach, you had the opportunity at Tennessee. I remember telling Tennessee friends of mine, and I'm around them all the time. I said, as great as Peyton is, y'all will probably win the national championship a year or two after he's gone. That's just the way that stuff goes. And you did it the next year with T. Martin out of Williamson High School in Mobile. I remember that Syracuse win up there, and Coach Fulmer and y'all were talking about, didn't Willis Carrier invent the damn air conditioning? And the Carrier Dome had no air conditioning, and y'all won a close
Unbelievable.
game. Let's talk about the coaching, the quarterback position. You coached Peyton, you coached Eli, and a good friend of mine worked with you when you were at Ole Miss. He really thought a lot of you. Barry Blackburn, a state planning attorney. We went to Auburn together.
Yeah.
And I just remember you coached Eli, because I know Marcus Woodson. He came in with Eli. Talk about that. And now Arch, because you also coached Cooper when he was at Ole Miss, Arch's father. I'm just going to let you go.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go in reverse form here. Arch, I love as a young man. I started working with him. Cooper would bring him up to Duke, and we'd get a little private work. And I felt fine about that because it wasn't about recruiting him, at all at that point.
Yeah.
And so in the off season, we would get that work, and I always worked with Peyton and Eli, and during their off seasons. And so I really, Arch has got a lot of talents physically, but I think he has got an innate talent of being a great teammate. And when he went to Texas for that spring, that was the one thing I was doing this job then. And so I went out to see spring ball, and I saw him before practice, and we sat down and visited. And I said, Arch, I'm going to tell you the same two things I told your uncles as you come in. And I said, the first focus you should have is to be a great teammate. That's what people remember about the people they played with. And you have to work at that. And so he said, well, how do you do that? And I said, well, I think you're pretty natural at this. You care more about others than you care about yourself. Once you start caring too much about yourself, it can consume you. And I said, so I want you to spend your energy this first spring totally focused on being the best teammate. You have nothing to prove. And then the next thing I want you to remember is that we don't work football. We play football. It's a sport. I want you to remember that you got to have fun. You got to go out there and play. And I was out there this spring, and we were laughing about that conversation. And, he hadn't played as much as maybe a lot of people would have thought. And there's a lot of experts talking now about that. All that doesn't matter. He is happy. He's playing football.
Yeah.
He's where he wants to be. That's forgotten in this era right now.
Correct.
And God bless you, Arch. So, man, I hope it goes great. There's no guarantees as we talk about preseason. Nothing's happened yet. So, we're all pretty much in the same spot. But anyway, I think the world of him and Cooper and Ellen, his parents, and Hyde, his brother, would always come along and snap. And Hyde, by the way, his brother's at the University of Texas. How about that?
Wow.
Because he wanted to go there.
Yeah.
And then, just stepping through all of those years, going back to Peyton, it's such a different dynamic recruiting. My first home visit recruiting Peyton, sitting down with him, obviously I'd had millions of phone calls, but when I left that house, I knew we would sign him. Yeah. We were too much alike. We thought he asked all the right questions. It was interesting. I think that was the beginning of Peyton making me better, because you better have real answers to questions. That's just the way he's built.
Yeah.
And then the Eli recruitment was kind of comical because I had recruited him and hard to come to Tennessee. And he said, I just don't want to follow Peyton, coach. And I was close to him. I'd had him in camp when he was, I don't know, 14 maybe. And from that time, and, loved him. And I respected that. And then he said, I don't think I really want to follow my dad at Ole Miss. And I think it really came down with Eli choosing between Texas and Virginia, and I think he would have gone to Texas. But at the end of that season, the chancellor of the University of Mississippi at the time, Robert Kayak, called me, and he said, we want you to be our next coach. I guess Tommy had left kind of in the middle of the night, if you remember.
Oh, yeah. In the pine box, of course.
Yeah. And so I said, beg your pardon. I mean, we just beat Vanderbilt to go undefeated. I'm having this conversation. And you know what? I had already interviewed with them once before as an assistant at Tennessee for the head coaching job. And I knew I was ready. I'd had to turn down some other jobs. I knew I was ready. I wanted an SEC job. I said, what the heck? So I said, yes. Then I called Olivia. And that's another story. When I was recruiting Peyton, the first thing Olivia asked me was, is Steve Kiner still around Tennessee? And if you don't know that story, Steve Kiner is the one that said Archie who.
Yes.
Okay?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And so I called her and I said, Olivia, she said, well, Archie told her he had known. And I said, well, you tell Eli he's now going to Ole Miss. And then I called Eli and I said, I've already called your mom, Eli. You're now going to Ole Miss. Just stop all the recruiting. That's it. Recruiting's over. And he said, yes, sir. So that's how Eli ended up at Ole Miss. And then you mentioned T. T. Martin had played at Williamson, and it was a tough time for Williamson.
Yeah.
What an incredible athlete. And to follow up with Peyton, T had never taken a snap under the center. They shotgunned everything.
Yeah.
And we were real pro style offense under the center most of the time in that era. And what a great learner. But I'll tell you a quick story about it. I guarantee he's the only national championship quarterback that was a left-hander that threw it right-handed. He wasn't ambidextrous. The only thing T. Martin did with his right hand was throw a football. And I asked him why. And he said, well, every time I tried to throw it with my left hand, my dad would make me stop. So you don't throw it with that hand, you throw it with the other hand. And so he learned how to throw a football with his right hand. And I mean, he is one of those strong left-handers, that turns his arm up over the top of the page. And he said, yeah, coach, the only thing I do with my right hand is throw a football. So that's kind of maybe not very brief, but that's kind of a rundown of that era and how all that went down.
That was incredible because I never knew that about T. And I know that he and Damian Craig were close because Damian was from Blount, and I think Auburn people thought he was coming there, and him and Jamal Lewis and Cozy Coleman, all those guys, y'all got to Tennessee. Yeah. And I remember as a kid the Steve Kiner comment. I mean, 38-0.
Oh yeah, Archie who and Olivia, she was dead set on Peyton not ending up at Tennessee. And I'll tell you another cute little ending to that when she finally realized, well, there's no way I'm gonna separate you two. Okay. Wow. She said, David, do me one favor. I said, yes, ma'am. She said, Archie was always getting hit, always uniform, just dirty, filthy after a game. Please keep Peyton Manning's uniform clean. And I said, yes, ma'am, you can count on it. And so that was really a time when I'd already been doing this. I time every bit of the pass game. And it's indebted to in me deeply. It is so deep. So at 2.8, I know the ball's out. I'm on a quarterback. Yeah. And Peyton was great at it, the rhythm. And that's why they'd come back and bring their receivers back in the off season, because it's not yardage on routes, it's timing.
Yeah.
And quarterbacks and receivers, the only thing a quarterback gets a tip from a receiver is with the back of his head. And so, that timing is everything.
Yeah.
So we kept Peyton Manning's uniform clean at Tennessee, brother. I can promise you that. I wasn't going to break a promise to Olivia Manning.
Yeah, that is it. Look, that's a cool story, because that, again, Peyton's in Memphis a lot, because obviously his family's here, and my friend Tommy Christenberry sees him a lot because the in-laws live next door to him. But he has got that deadpan sense of humor. They're so marketable, that family. And then you see Arch. That's really neat what you said about him. I want to ask you about some of the other quarterbacks in the SEC from your vantage point. I want to start with a guy that last year, when most people were picking out headstones for Florida, I picked him to go 8-5 because I believe, nothing against Graham Mertz, but I liked DJ Lagway. Would you talk about him as a quarterback, and then Lenora Sellers at South Carolina?
Yeah, those are two that I like. I've watched them practice. I've sat in their quarterback meetings with them as I go travel. Most of the QB guys will ask me to sit in a pre-practice meeting. And I think DJ is obviously we know he's a terrific athlete. He's gotten better and better at throwing the football accurately. Billy Napier is a great teacher of quarterbacks. One heck of a football coach. And so, I'm going to say this, and then I'll get to Lenore's, but, it's interesting. I heard the Oklahoma comments, Mateer, and more importantly, Arbuckle there. What people don't understand, playing quarterback is systematic. It's not memorization. You have to understand the system. In this new era of moving and transferring, it's very rare to see a quarterback or a quarterback coach entrench into, and Peyton and I were talking about this 2 days ago. You got to know your why. You can't just sit there, and I'm watching and I'm learning these different coaches, and I hear a lot of what and how. I hear a lot of correction of, what you're doing or how you're doing it. I don't hear enough why. And what I've come to the conclusion of as I travel and look and talk to my friends and even talk to my buddies, I got a lot of quarterback coaches that played for us that are in the NFL or coach for us, is that they don't really understand the why portion of it. If you understand why you're doing something, you're going to do it better, and it's going to be more important to you to do it better. So the transfer circumstance, not getting entrenched in a system, is dangerous for a quarterback collegiately, but it can be the same thing as they transition into the NFL. So with that said, DJ is in a system. He is being raised in a system. I pray to the good Lord that he's got good coaches. He's got a good opportunity there, good people around him. I think he's a very talented youngster. He's got size, strength. He's going to do nothing but get better. And we've seen that he made a difference on the field. Now, we're not talking about theory here. He made a difference on the field. Norris, I've watched him practice multiple times. They do a really good job. They've had some coaching changes, but Coach Beamer, his dad and I are very close.
Yeah.
So I've known young Coach Beamer for quite some time, and they're very detail oriented, and there's a lot of energy in that building. And I think that young man's got a really high ceiling, and I think we saw, the bits and pieces of it. And I just think if he stays the course, he's going to be at the right place and do well. I do.
Coach, going back to DJ Lagway, it's like the interesting comments about the system. Um, Lots there because I love, even going further back, being a teammate, right? My dad's a sports writer, among an author of books and co-writing books for Urban Meyer and Steve Spurrier. Spurrier talked a lot about teammates, right? He talked about the importance of a teammate. And I, grew up in those rooms hearing these conversations, and then we led into talking about the Manning family, and sort of like the traditions that go through being in the family and all that stuff. Uh, uh, Lagway is a great teammate when you watch the things off the field. I'm blessed that I get to go on the sidelines and watch every Florida game. But Lagway, he's a teammate. He's out there, right, in pre warm up. He's out there running out. He's high fiving. He's there. So do you think that's coachable? Because outside of a system, because I just don't see that in every guy. I didn't see it in former quarterbacks that were there.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think all of us, our first coaches, you mentioned your father, are at home. I think being a great family member and learning and being a part of a family is important. But I also do think that through a connection, that a teacher, a slash coach, can help a young person grasp that. And it is so rewarding to think about when you're thinking about yourself all the time, how depressed you could get or how down you could get.
Yeah.
If you're focused on other people, you're going to be more energetic. I've let myself down a lot, but I'm not going to let other people down. That's one of the things that I talk about. Don't get consumed in what you didn't do. And then, you go into you have to become confident. I was asked when I went back to Tennessee, I was asked by Eric Ainge, I was taking over pretty tough situation. Okay. I don't know why I decided that I would do that. I thought I was probably through with coaching after my heart surgery and all of that stuff. I think Philip was trying to kill me. Maybe, I don't know. But anyway, he came into my office and great looking youngster. And he said, well, I don't think people have any confidence in me. And I said, well, stop right there. Do you have confidence in yourself? And he just kind of sat there quietly. And I said, okay, let's just restart this whole thing. I said, the first thing, the reason people wouldn't have confidence in you, let's start carrying yourself and looking like a starting quarterback at Tennessee.
Yeah.
And there were a few things, his pants weren't up as high as I would like them. Okay. I'm sorry, Eric, if that offends you, but I didn't care at the time.
Yeah.
And I said, I'd like to see what color your hair is, real. And just a few other things. And I'm not bashing. People don't bash me out there on social media because
Don't worry about it.
I really don't care. So
That's right.
I'm not looking for new friends.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting thing. And I said, Eric, confidence is earned both ways, in yourself and from others. Nobody gives you confidence. So let's start looking at your work habits. So what I did with him, and I do this to a degree, not as long, but when I took him over, he was frustrated. I would not talk any offense or any pass concepts. And I went 5 weeks with him teaching him defense.
Wow.
That goes back to the why. And I wasn't going to let up until he understood why they were doing things on defense. And he had I don't know what it was, 30 to 40 sacks that year before. And holding the ball and just, oh man, I had a hard time watching the films, but he earned it. I didn't do anything for him. He earned his confidence. I couldn't give him confidence, and I kept reminding him of that.
Yeah.
So when you're asked, how do you do it? You make young people earn their way.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to earn being a great teammate.
Yeah.
I want to see it every day. It's one of the things I had a run in with a professor at Duke, and he was talking about how important he was, and he was this and he was that. And I said, how often do you get a student? I said, one time in your course? Yes. I don't have multiple times in my course. And I said, well, I have them for 4 and 5 years every friggin' day.
Yeah.
So don't talk to me about how ridiculous sports and coaching is.
Yeah.
So that's kind of your answer. And I will tell you all this, the word coach, it was a Hungarian town. I think it's pronounced like Koski. They made wagons with wheels that ultimately, when it became something in Great Britain, was called a coach.
Mm-hmm.
And people would be somewhere and have a destination they would want to get to. What would they get in? They would get in a coach. And then there were students at Oxford that decided they had such great mentors and teachers, they started calling them coaches because they were taking them to where they wanted to be. And that's why I'm saying system. And I wish young people were still trying to find the right coaches and people and places to go instead of taking money to go somewhere. The rest of your life is important.
Yeah.
So, anyway, enough of the preaching.
But is that what makes the Manning family so unique in a lot of ways? It's like, I'm not saying they're a system, but how unique it is to grow up in that space and time. You're so intimate with that family, and as far as and like I said, I've known my father to do similar things, and I just, is that why everyone says Arch is going to be great? Because they know where he comes from. You're such a cerebral coach. I love that. You make people think. You make young people think. Is that why people are just so signed off on Arch in a lot of ways, because they know, or is it just? Talk to me about the thinking there.
Well, I don't think you can deny the fact that there's a culture in the Manning family.
Yeah.
And Arch has that culture. I mean, who else has stayed as a backup?
Yeah.
In college football that has talent. Okay, none, right? They just don't do it. I shouldn't say none. There are others, but he's committed to the success of the others there. The Texas program is important to him, and it's now hard to use the term program. What we need, the reality is, and when we talk about coaches and hot seats, it's all team to team now.
Yeah.
And, living and dying in the portal, or, getting the right mix of high school players. But how do you, I'm looking right now at the 365-day calendar as to how it can be improved to develop young people.
Yeah.
Everybody gets caught up in, well, the coaches have to do this. Well, let's start January 1 like any year does. And obviously some teams are still playing, but back in the day when you finished your bowl game, your next team started right there in January.
Right.
The culture was built.
Yeah.
And we need a better calendar to build culture to give these young people the best chance they can get to be the very best they can be, for whatever that's worth.
And Coach, look, I cannot thank you enough. We got to do this again. I'm so glad you're in the SEC office too, because
we got to have Coach back on. We could talk a whole hour with him.
Yeah, and I know
you
have no idea how much this means to our audience, because you are, you went to Alabama, played for Coach Bryant to learn how to coach, and you got to be one of his best students he ever had. But also, you said something about how we talk to ourselves. I'm a big fan of Dr. Kevin Elko, and he always says, think about how you talk to yourself. He goes, he goes, would you let other people talk to you like that? And that's something that Bruce Lee said it. Your mind, your body doesn't know the difference. So when you're talking to yourself like that, They don't care. You need to be. I'd love to see you the commissioner. I mean, but at least be on a level of college football. But Barry used to talk about you and Coach Cordelli and all my friends at Ole Miss, and that you were. It was a special time. And Marcus Woodson goes, I came in with Eli and I left with Eli. He stayed 5 years. And that was rare for y'all to get a player from Moss Point, Mississippi, I might add.
Oh, Jesse Mitchell and Marcus Woodson came in together. And guess what? Marcus Woodson has turned out to be a terrific college football coach. And Jesse Mitchell was sitting on the Supreme Court of the state of Mississippi, both from Moss Point, Mississippi. I got to tell y'all this real quick, and I know you got to make money and advertise, but I was sitting I was kind of a young head coach. And I'm in their home down there, and Jesse's brother played at LSU, and I'm trying to recruit Jesse hard. And I said something just in passing, man, we're right down here about sea level. And boy, his daddy, I didn't know that was a bad thing to say. His daddy took offense to it. What do you mean? We're 20 feet above sea level. I'm like, oh, God, did I blow this one?
No, you got it. But, I mean, Coach, what a treat. And I know someone's asking about Marshall Manning, that Peyton's son is. Have you seen it? Last thing, and we'll let you go, I promise, and we'll wrap it up. Have you seen Marshall?
Yes, a lot. And Peyton sent me videos a week ago of him throwing, and he looked really good at them. And so it's pretty constant. I worked for Peyton Manning because I had to make a playbook for Marshall's flag ball team that Peyton was coaching, and he didn't have time. So I put a bunch of plays together. So, yeah, I'm apparently coaching another Manning pro bono again. Here we go,
Well, it just makes college football better and better, man. Hey, Coach, thank you so much. I'll see you. Hopefully you'll be at Media Days in Atlanta. Brendan and I'll be there all week. But what a treasure. We'll have to do it again soon, okay?
All right. You guys take care.
Thanks, you too. Sir. Let me say something real quick, man. All of our sponsors, Landers Ford, open every day except Sunday, 7 a.m., 7 p.m. Hewlett and Dunn on the Square in Collierville, every day, 10 to 6 except Sunday. And Winter Timber every day of the week. Hey, most often see the face of Christ in the least among us. See you tomorrow. Watch this channel all day, all night, every day.
We're going to take Rob off his coffee soon. Good night, John Boy.
Yeah.